All right. I'm Erik Kain,
And I'm Tassi.
I'm David Thier.
and we are here to talk about video games, video game news, general news, Fortnite, PUBG, Call of Duty, all that good stuff. There's actually quite a lot going on as March sort of rolls in. It's been kind of a silent couple of months as the year got started, but I
As
feel
we're
like
recording this is like the biggest news day in like eons.
Yeah, it really
So
is.
much
Call
stuff
of
is
Duty,
announced. There's still a Nintendo Direct that hasn't happened
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I wonder if that's going to be big or not. They could always pull out a surprise on us.
The Direct, yeah. I heard something about Mario Tennis stuff, which could be cool. I don't know if they're going to pull something crazy, but
I think what we might get is just a release date that's a little bit sooner than we were expecting. They had said spring originally, so who knows? Maybe they'll release it tonight.
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened, so maybe.
Yeah.
You know what? I hope they announce a Mario Kart Battle Royale.
Oh man, that would be great.
Can you imagine how amazing that would be?
Or how about just a Super Mario Odyssey battle royale?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be
hats at each other
on your opponents, cappies everywhere.
Yeah, that'd be a shit show. Yeah, I kind of don't have huge hopes for Nintendo's announcing anything huge tonight, but I mean, it's Nintendo, so really anything could happen.
Yeah, I feel like we might get a little more about Yoshi, which we know that's coming, but we don't really know much about it.
There's a Kirby game this year, right?
Yeah, that's pretty soon.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, that's next week.
Yeah.
That's next week? Jeez.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Kirby guy, I guess.
No, me
Yeah.
neither. But I have been wondering about this year with Nintendo because it's you can't top last year. It's impossible. So
Well,
I
feel like
guess I
that's
wonder
why
how
you do
Mario
something
Tennis will
weird like Labo, you can't top last year in terms of video games, but you could do it in terms of DIY cardboard peripherals.
True. Yes. I guess that probably will be the big thing this year, weirdly enough. But I mean, I think the Switch will keep selling because it's just the Switch and it's kind of even riding off the back of games that are already released. I think it's just going to keep blowing up. But in terms of actual software, I do find myself wondering if anything's going to be like some enormous breakout hit that we're not really predicting. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of it. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be like last year, though. I don't think anything, even, cool peripherals and stuff. I just don't think we're going to have that.
I mean, they'd have to release like Pokemon and Smash Brothers within like a couple months of each other to even have a year that could rival.
Do it. I don't think,
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever been a year for any video game company like last year, and maybe there won't be again.
Right. Yeah, that was a big year. I mean, it outsold the PS4's first year in Japan. So they're killing it. They do need to have stuff down the pipeline, though. They need to have more. They need to show us more, even if it's not coming out until 2019. They can't just dump like paid online on us and say, have fun.
I'm skeptical about how that's going to go, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we already know about the voice chat, and if that's the only thing we know, it is not a great thing.
Are they still doing the crazy thing with all the different cords and like plugging things into your phone? Like, is that still happening, or did I like hallucinate that?
I think it is. Yeah, yeah.
It's just the worst system I've ever seen. I can't believe that like made it to production.
I remember there was a time when Reggie, God bless him, was trying to argue that no, this is a choice, and we like this. And it's just like
everyone has a phone on them at all
right.
times, so clearly this is just so logical.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So the Nintendo Direct, there's also the Trump meeting today where he's going to solve the gun violence crisis with the video game industry people.
Yeah, I've been listening to some grunge music, busting out my old middle school journals. It's the 90s.
Yeah. Getting satanic with D&D,
Exactly.
I feel like the good news is this is being just sort of taken as a non-issue kind of throwaway thing by everyone. Like no one is like really serious other than maybe the 4 people at this meeting arguing against it.
Well, and not
this is going to turn into a thing.
As serious as they need to be. I mean, they know what's up. They basically exist to fight this fight over and over again, and I don't think they're worried in the slightest.
Well, I feel like the ESA is going to use this to like win back goodwill from squandering it on the loot box things. Everyone was like really anti ESA, ESRB like 2 weeks ago, and now we're like, there are champions fighting against.
Well, that was a funny thing, because like I can understand the frustration with not doing too much about it, but I think the reason that's happening is this week reminds us what the ESA is there for. They're not an organization designed to police the video game industry. They're an organization designed to defend the video game industry.
Right. Exactly. Which you could look at the loot box situation and say, taking some moderate steps to self-police is defending the video game industry rather than having the government come in and start to regulate.
True. Well, I don't think the ESA is really set up to do that.
Not really.
It's kind of two different issues, because like video game violence is like, okay, you fully have gamer support on that one, and like no one wants to see video games playing for mass shootings or things like that. But the problem becomes with the loot box issue, it's very much split, where then you have kind of the public against you on that issue. And like defending that is defending the publishers that run the ESA and ESRB, because that is their biggest cash cow. So it's two kind of wildly different issues, even if they're both kind of defense in one sense or another.
Right. I think with the loot boxes, I don't think there's a lot of people outside of accounting departments at major publishers are like, yes, I love loot boxes. But I think when that kind of came out, people were looking to the ESA because it has this very official sounding name and because it interacts with lawmakers. But again, like it's just they're not set up. It's not really their role to do that kind of thing. ESRB kinda. And so I think there's sort of a disconnect between what people thought might be possible and
I feel like a lot of people don't understand that like the publishers run these
right.
bodies. So like, no, the ESRB wasn't going to like AO rate every game with loot boxes. Like that just was never going to happen. And
right.
it to expect otherwise like is kind of disingenuous. Like there really would have to be actual legislation before they were forced to do anything really. I mean, other than these little, this game contains microtransaction labels. Like there wasn't much else that was going to result from that, is even as lame as it was when it did come out what they were doing. But
I mean, it could be that platform holders put their feet down, but I doubt that it'll happen either. I don't see Sony or Microsoft really entering the fray on this one.
No, they don't care. I thought Microsoft was going to start selling like loot boxes for like avatar items, like through Xbox. But
I wonder if we'll see a loot box on the Nintendo platform, of course.
Yeah, has Nintendo done anything resembling loot boxes? Well, Fire Emblem Heroes is like the ultimate gacha loot box sim, and ironically is their most profitable mobile title by far.
Yeah,
outside of Pokemon Go, but
right, which isn't really theirs, of course.
Yeah. Nintendo also has said they don't really care for that system, but they like the money, of course.
Yeah, I don't see them shutting down Fire Emblem Heroes anytime soon. Yeah. So
it's been interesting to see Nintendo get into mobile because, they haven't had really any super huge hits. Super Mario Run. Everyone kind of thought that would be a pretty big game, but it was, but it wasn't like earth shattering. I really kind of had high hopes for the Animal Crossing.
Yeah, me too.
And that really was a letdown. That was just like bad grinds and just bland. I don't know. It was like 10% of an Animal Crossing game.
Yeah, it didn't really need to be.
It just didn't have that sense of living in a place, which is what for me Animal Crossing is all about. And just didn't, it didn't scratch that itch for 1,000 different reasons that added up to kind of the one big one.
I mean, there's one feedback loop. It's like, make this furniture to make this person visit you. And that's like essentially the whole game, which is just not that engaging for more than like a couple weeks at the most. I don't know. I dropped that very quickly.
I go back every once in a while, I'm just watching TV and I'll play Super Mario Run. And, it's actually pretty great. There's a lot about that gameplay that's just really slick. I think they just really messed up the monetization. And the Toad Rally was just one of the most poorly conceived of games.
Toad Rally, oh my god, I forgot about that.
But sort of at the core, there's this really wonderful little game that they just didn't know what to do with it,
Yeah, it's very good for the platform. It's just I guess when you also compare it against pretty much any other Mario title on any other device, it can't really live up. Like it is really good for the mobile platform. It's hard because games are not monetized like that on mobile, so it's kind of really no wonder no one to do that. And then diehard Nintendo fans are like, well, I'm just going to put another 100 hours into Super Mario Odyssey because that's better.
Much better. Yeah, what I don't understand about the Animal Crossing experiment is why they didn't just basically make a regular Animal Crossing game. I mean, it would work on a mobile platform just as well as 3DS.
I mean, there's no... It seems like most mobile platforms would be powerful enough to handle a contiguous map like that. I mean, they had it on the DS. My iPad is definitely more powerful than the DS. I'm pretty sure every phone out there is, you know.
Yeah, no, I think it would work just fine.
Yeah. I don't think it's a tech issue. I think Nintendo has repeatedly, purposefully limited the scope of these mobile games in order to make sure people are still buying the quote unquote proper ones for their other systems. Like I've been saying this with Pokemon Go forever, where like, how do you make a Pokemon game with no NPCs in it? Like, and I think that was a distinct decision by the Pokemon company to make sure that Go didn't end up kind of eclipsing the proper games. Even as dumb as that idea kind of is, I do think that these decisions are being consciously made because you're going to see an Animal Crossing on Switch, and that's going to be a fully featured version of it. And I don't think they wanted to put all their eggs in the mobile basket by making the mobile version the full version that they obviously want to release for Switch. So that's my theory as to why they're doing that.
You know, I think so. And for Pokemon Go specifically, actually, what I've heard around is that that's actually not true. That Niantic, part of the deal, they had 100% creative control. Because
seriously, that seems so unlikely, though.
It does, but you know, there's two things to remember. One is that the Pokemon Company is really just a licensing company. They don't really have people there to do that kind of content policing. They know.
I guess it would be Game Freak, not
the Game Freak. Right? And they weren't really involved with it at all. You know, I think they don't have the people there because historically, if you're making a game, it's Game Freak, and they got it handled. You know, the Pokemon Company doesn't need to tell them about it. And then, you know, from that perspective, if Niantic has 100% creative control, you know, they weren't game developers. And so a lot of things that might seem really obvious, like NPCs, might not be at the forefront of their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which just goes to show you can still strike gold even if the game isn't all that great.
Yeah,
as a Pokemon game.
You really just want to have reminded them about, you know, 3 decades of game development experience that have really taught some people some lessons.
Yeah. Speaking of Pokemon Go, there's the new Harry Potter. Was that Wizards Unite?
Wizards Unite. Yes.
Yeah.
Awkwardly titled game. What's interesting about this game? There aren't that many Harry Potter games, are there?
No,
they made. Didn't they make some on PlayStation a long time ago?
Yeah, and I feel like
they were like
really let it
just
ride
okay
for a long time. And now they're really revitalizing at the moment. We've got this Hogwarts Mystery from Jam City coming out pretty soon.
What's
we don't have a release date. It's a mobile game. I don't think they've announced monetization, but I'm pretty sure it'll be free to play.
Yeah.
It's sort of an RPG where you play a student at Hogwarts, and you learn how to make potions and get your house and do all that kind of stuff. I assume you fight evil every once in a while, but it's really focused on sort of that school RPG.
On potion making.
On potion.
Clearly,
potion.
Just going after the best part of the Harry Potter series.
Oh yeah, by far the most interesting. Yeah, I want like a BioWare style Harry Potter game. You know, like
this is another property. Style. Like Eric, we always talk about this, where like all these big properties that would clearly be amazing video games if someone would do something with the license, like The Walking Dead or a big Game of Thrones RPG, but just no one ever does.
Yeah,
it's
too bad.
I think Kotaku wrote an article yesterday about dream Harry Potter games, and I think the best one they came up with was Aurora's sort of XCOM.
Like a turn-based?
Yeah, like a turn-based squad.
Yeah,
firing spells all over.
I've always wanted that in an XCOM style fantasy game. That would work really well with Harry Potter.
I want like a Jedi Knight 2 kind of like thing where you're going around using force magic powers and slinging spells and stuff. Like, I think you could make a kind of a cool action game based on that.
Maybe,
but I also just don't like XCOM. So,
a little bit.
but what if it was a Diablo style looter?
Yeah, that's more up your alley.
Yeah.
Actually,
It would just be wands.
I always said
It's
that as a
just a ton
joke,
of
but I
wands.
could see that working too.
So we have wands, robes, and hats.
Yeah.
What else do we? Maybe pets. Pets are a big part of the Harry Potter mythos. So
You
that's
could get a
cool.
house elf to follow you around and like.
Yeah, that was always
Right,
one of the
pauldrons.
strangest part of that franchise for me. Like when Hermione's trying to free the enslaved house elves, and everyone's like, "Oh, Hermione, you're so silly." You're like,
Yeah,
"Wait,
I think that's why they cut that out of the movie.
Well, they had some of that in there.
They had just Dobby being good,
Yeah.
but they cut Hermione's whole like
Yeah, that's
crusade to free all house elves or whatever.
she sort of raised the moral question that no one really wanted to answer.
Yeah, and everyone's like, "What a weirdo!" Like advocating for.
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, but for
Yeah.
Wizards Unite, I think we're seeing all these non-Niantic knockoffs coming out. The Ghostbusters. I don't know what's up with the Walking Dead one, but that will eventually happen apparently, and now Jurassic Park. And I think that they're really going to struggle without the Pokestops. That sort of database of Pokestops is really, Pokestops, ingress portals, however you want to call them. It's really, really crucial for grounding the game in reality, even though it also limits it in rural places. But when you play Draconius Go or whatever, you really feel the lack of those things.
Yeah, like Go might have its problems, but its one strength is being like so rooted in the core of this map kind of interface and being so directly tied to Google Maps and like having the team from Google Maps like have developed this. And literally, like, yeah, we were talking the other day about this. There's like a Jurassic Park Pokemon Go game that I'm like writing up right now, and it's literally like they made it so you don't even have to move. Like you can just send drones out to like farm dinosaurs for you or something.
Wow.
And clearly they're doing that because I have to believe technical limitations where they understand that the walking around aspect is probably not going to be great.
Right.
And I think few other games can replicate that. So I guess that could be the one thing in Harry Potter's corner, where is at least they still have that same framework.
I feel like other people can recreate the sort of GPS enabled walking around. You see all kinds of apps that do that aren't games, but without that just hard fought user created data on real world locations, you're always going to be losing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a clear advantage in that genre, and that's fine because honestly, if everyone's trying to make these games, we're just going to have this flood of games that just don't go anywhere. This always happens in gaming. Like
I would be amazed if
thing
anyone
happens and
besides Niantic's like ever really caught on. Like I'm not even sure Harry Potter will catch on. At least not. It definitely won't on the level of Go. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think that can happen again. Certainly, but I think it can do.
That was unlike anything gaming itself has really ever seen in the whole industry. So I think that's going to be almost impossible to replicate on purpose.
But I feel like a lot of that is actually it's sort of Niantic's fault. Is that they found themselves at the center of this giant craze, and then the game just couldn't hold up to it. And so all these people were like, "Oh, is that like Pokemon Go? I don't know. I uninstalled that." And that's going to be a real limitation for anyone, Niantic or otherwise, that tries to do it again.
Yeah.
I never got on board with the Pokemon Go craze, honestly. Like, I missed the big month where you guys made out like bandits.
It's
in the forest having fun, and
it was fun when there were just so many people swarming the streets playing it, but then after that it just became a lot more of a drag.
Yeah. I remember, you've gotten some of that back, with the raids. Or I took my mom to a raid a few months ago, and she was just so tickled by sort of what a charming and positive thing it was. And I think that there's something so lovely about that literally no other game does or can do. And that's why it's always just disappointing to see it not live up to its full potential.
Well, and the thing is like everyone's like, oh, it's dead. Like who plays that anymore? But like going from what I think at one point it was like 750 million downloads or something, like even if that's 95% cut, that's still a huge game by comparison to most other titles. So it lives on among kind of a diehard crowd, but it is a lot bigger than people realize. Like, yes, you're not like seeing everyone on the street and their, and their mom playing it, but it is still very big, and I think that's often
community,
overlooked.
Community Day was that 2 weeks ago. I saw crowds. There was one raid I went to where I would say that there was 100 people at.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I see in Chicago, it's like, I guess there's so many different raid stops and like big things that there are people, but you don't get like that big of clusters in one specific spot unless you're in like Millennium Park or something.
Right. I think with Philly, there's a ton of gyms and Pokestops all over, but the city is very clearly oriented around Old City and Center City, and so people kind of know that if it's Community Day, you should head there, or if a new Legendary pops, you should head there. And so I think that helps concentrate people.
Well, pivoting to other giant news today, Ubisoft announced The Division 2 hours before Black Ops 4, but that was still a big story.
That's day for announcements.
So I haven't played The Division really since 2 months or so after launch. I know, Paul, you've kept up on it, right? Like, what's changed?
It pulled a Diablo 3 essentially.
Right.
It got very good, and it was pretty good at the start. And I'd argue that the initial campaign, it was really excellent, especially when compared to the Destiny or even Diablo campaigns. It was a very good kind of introduction to the world. The problem then was that there was no end game, and they didn't really understand how to make an end game. But they've spent kind of 2 years learning how to do that, and like learning from Borderlands and Destiny and stuff like that, and ultimately creating just so many ways to get loot, like so many kind of builds you can make and things you can invest in, that it's gotten really good and like just really fundamentally good. And if they can take those lessons, unlike Destiny 2, who abandoned all their lessons, and apply them to the new game, I think it's going to be pretty big. And I think The Division has more of a fan base and interest in it than most people would imagine.
Yeah, well, it's really surprising to me to see what Ubisoft has done with not just The Division, but with Rainbow Six Siege, even Ghost Recon Wildlands, even For Honor.
For Honor is making a bit of a comeback too,
right? With dedicated servers, yeah. So it's just interesting to see across multiple titles. Yeah, Assassin's Creed, just with its longer development. Far Cry 5 is looking quite good, I think, especially with the really, really cool map editor. But just kind of, I know it looks awesome, right?
Yeah, it looks so cool. Yeah.
They are just making their games better, and it's really interesting to see this focus on quality and listening to fan feedback. And I wouldn't have expected that a couple years ago.
No, and I think it's they showed some charts recently where under sort of an old release only model, a game would be expected to make like 5% or some really low percentage in its second year, but it did in its first year, and now it's 50%. Wow. And I think that they're really, really trying to push that without sort of going into loot box territory, though of course they do have loot box like things in some of their games. And it's working really well for everything.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of, we talk sometimes about games as a service with kind of a little bit of disdain or suspicion. Because it's easy to see how a publisher might just sort of cash in, but we also on the other hand, you see how that continued support can really benefit these titles. Yeah, and I haven't.
It's a good word at the end of the day. It's nice to have a service.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the end, I mean, you need to keep investing and updating these games because, like, yes, when you think of games as service, you mean like they're trying to sell us loot boxes for events every 3 months or something like that. But in order to keep people playing, to care about even getting loot boxes in the first place, you have to keep adding to the game and making improvements for it. So while the loot box aspect of kind of games of service may suck in and of itself, in order for that to even be supported, you have to have the fundamental goal of making your game interesting enough to be continually played for that long where people will even spend money. So that's like the good aspect of it, quote unquote.
Right. Well, we certainly saw with both The Division and Rainbow Six a lot of criticism early on, and a lot of worry that these games are just kind of going to dry up, that the player count was dropping off, and and just that ability to support the games and to listen to the communities has been pretty remarkable. And it is kind of a stark contrast to what we've seen with Destiny 2. Because really with the first Destiny, it did seem like the game continually was improving. And I really thought for sure that Destiny 2 would take all those lessons from the first game and then put them into this new engine, into this new game. And it was like, yes, they had some quality of life improvements, like a map, but so in so many other ways, it's just almost like they learned nothing.
I think that was a big problem with their sort of development cycle, this really aggressive cycle that they have been pushing ever since the beginning, that while one team was making all of these quality of life decisions, the other team had already been building Destiny 2 for a year. And I think there was a real disconnect there where a lot of that stuff of year 3 and maybe even, sort of later year 2 of Destiny 1 was just, it didn't have time to make it into Destiny 2, ironically.
Yeah, that plus just layered on top of actual bad decisions, like fundamentally changing how loadouts work, like the shader thing.
Yeah,
that was supposed to be a money maker, but it was just stupid. And yeah, it felt like a combination of new bad decisions, but then also redoing a lot of the mistakes that were already corrected in the first place. And I don't know, I just wrote about this today, but it was like people are just giving up because this isn't year 1 anymore. Like this is year 1 of Destiny 2, but it's year 4. And so to have this roadmap, quote unquote, that's like this year-long journey to maybe getting back to where Destiny 1 was when it ended. Like that seems to be the ultimate goal. Like it's just exhausting to even think about that. And like forget improving on Destiny 1 in very many ways. It's the goal is to now even get back to kind of the starting line. And people are just like, screw it. There's too many other games to play. Like
that's for sure.
Not worth it.
I think that is something that was definitely true about Destiny 1, is that it came out really early on in the Xbox One PS4 lifespan, and there wasn't a lot of competition for it at the time. And I think that's a big part of why it got this year to kind of find its feet. And that's just not the case anymore.
I guess my own counterpoint to that itself would be, there isn't really competition right now in this specific genre. Like Destiny 2 is the only kind of new looter on the market right now, outside of something like maybe Monster Hunter World, because like the Division's old, Diablo is really old, and so is Borderlands, and like Borderlands 3 and the Division 2 and Anthem are still at least a year away. So it is, in terms of being like a looter shooter, it's kind of on an island right now, and it's totally squandering that potential. So people are moving to games that aren't looters, like Fortnite or whatever, just because they're more fun to play, but they're really wasting their market position in this current window.
I think you got to think about what people like about looters, and obviously really big part is loot. People like loot. But it's just sort of a way of combining the concept of a shooter with the concept of a sort of long-term grind. And in that sense, I think you do have that in a lot of other places. Fortnite and PUBG, obviously, they have their grindy elements to them while still having the individual matches. And while, it's not a traditional looter, I think it's still scratching a lot of those itches.
Yeah, well, and then the fact that Destiny 2 just isn't really. The loot is not exciting people very much. Yeah, that aspect of the game. Although a lot of aspects of the game. I know that I've never been as big of a Destiny player as well, probably either of you guys, but I just found myself getting pretty bored with Destiny 2 even faster than the first game. And if I want progression, I can yeah, it's not a looter, but I can get progression in a lot of other games, like Fortnite, like Call of Duty. Like
I think that for me, it really broke my rhythms really early on. The first thing was the Nightfall, which that's what I do. I sign in every week, do the Nightfall. And they turned it into this, and I know it's done now, but for so long it was this time limit nightmare, which is just really stressful. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And then so I do the Nightfall, and oftentimes I do the raid, which for Wrath of the Machine and even King's Fall was really fun. And I just thought this raid was just a sort of a checklist and a slog, despite being really pretty. And so I really didn't have any motivation.
Well, that's the thing though. So you did the Nightfall, but like, have you done the new Nightfall since they've changed it? Like,
no, I haven't.
That's what I mean, is because even if they actually did make it a lot better, but the point is it was terrible for 6 months. So
yeah, they broke my rhythms. They broke a lot of other people's rhythms, and I feel like they're gonna get another chance. You know, they're gonna get whatever's up. You know, whatever's happening in the fall, some bigger thing. A lot of people who are grumbling now, myself included, are gonna be like, all right, let's see what you got. And if they can make that hit, I think they can get back. If they can't, I think they're still very deep on that back foot.
I just think they're on a knife's edge, because it's not like the Taken King where that was just a year later and that was like a significant upgrade. But like now it's like, okay, we're looking for a Taken King again, except it's year 4, and like we shouldn't be doing this again. So well, I think they could do it. I think people are going to be a lot less eager to see that happen, or like eager to see what the changes are, because they've just been so disillusioned for so long. And I don't know, it could turn things around, but people are not going to be as forgiving this time around, I don't think.
Yeah. Plus, we'll all be playing Harry Potter Wizards Unite.
Yes, clearly.
At any time.
Well, and so much other stuff. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
The fall just gets. I mean, there's Red Dead. There's the Battlefield 5. There's Black Ops 4. There's who knows what else. There's
Nintendo stuff probably.
Yeah, there's so much competition now. I know, just even as just writing about games, trying to like fit in playing games can be an enormous challenge these days. There's just so much coming at you all the time, even on off months.
Yeah, I mean, this January is an off month, but that's really the only February, about half of it. But that's about all we got left,
Yeah, well, even those months had stuff. Monster Hunter World came out, and
that was such a time commitment. It's like, oh, you have 45 minutes to farm like these 3 items I need.
Yeah, no, there was a lot I really loved about that game, but I feel like it's not a Destiny or something like that, but it asks a certain level of commitment that you either have or you do not.
Yeah, and then like I'm trying to get into Kingdom Come Deliverance, but I just find those big 50, 60-hour RPGs kind of intimidating these days.
Yeah,
and
that game, I think it's a cool idea, but it just seemed like an obvious candidate for wait a year for them to iron out the bugs.
Yeah, that's why I'm not really trying too hard to just get through it really fast. Just play it in little, in short sessions and see where it goes. One game I've been playing lately that I've really enjoyed is Into the Breach. I don't know if you guys have tried that yet.
I have not, but it's excited about it.
I mean, did you play FTL?
No. Very briefly.
Oh my God, FTL is still one of my favorite games. It's such a great game. So this has some similarities because it's the same team, but it's not quite as. It's very hard, but it's not quite as punishing, I guess, is what I.
FTL wore me out pretty quick. I'm like, I'm not smart enough to play this.
Well, that game, I played it a bunch of times. Then I showed my brother. I was like, come play this game. And he sat down and he literally played through straight to the final boss on his first try.
Whoa.
It was just, honestly, it's just RNG. He just got lucky.
Interesting.
And he's like, this isn't that hard. What? Like, no, it's really hard. Trust me. But that's a fun one. But there's just so many indies now. I feel like compared to 2014, 2015, just the number of indie games releasing on top of all the AAA stuff, I can't even barely keep track of it all. I mean, this is why I write my games releasing next month posts. It's one way for me to keep track of what's coming out because, my inbox is constantly flooded with PR emails for all these games. I just can't even keep track.
It is very hard. And like, gaming is unique where it's just not like keeping up with TV or movies where it's just so much more of a time commitment. Like, because a season of a TV show these days is usually like 10 hours. But each of these games can come out and they can all be minimum 10 hours, like 10 to 100 or even more, depending if you're trying to be an expert player at the high levels. And there's just not enough time. And that's what I find. I mean, we all do this for a living, but what I find with my other friends our age is just nobody has the time to do it. So you might have someone like the guy who plays only Madden every year or only Call of Duty, but like that's the extent of what they can commit because just no one can keep up with all of it.
I think that's sort of the flip side of the games and service concept, which I think publishers might have to reckon with at a certain point, is that the stakes are really, really high if what you're doing is you're asking the gaming public to only play one game, so that there's just less room at the top of that mountain.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that is so incredibly true because, you know, a lot of these analysts that look at the industry, they think, well, this game can make so much money because these people are going to be putting all this time into it. But, you know, if you're playing, if all you're going to do is play Destiny 2 or Call of Duty all year long, then it's already, these AAA games are so expensive and failure is such a huge risk that, you know, this only becomes more important.
Yeah.
Although you're not quite as reliant on those first week sales, you are still asking for a huge time commitment.
And it's, you know, when you see big profile failures, like Lawbreakers or something like that, I think it's clear that when it goes wrong, things can go a lot more wrong because you have this expectation of building things out over seasons and over years, and so if you can't get that started, it can really collapse in a way that I think the traditional model, that game still might have done okay, or some people might have played it, and you just see it, the ground just falls out from under it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a very depressing note.
Sure.
There's a lot of good going on in the gaming industry too. I mean, I'm surprised at how many great games do come out. I mean, there's a lot of crap, but there are really just so many good games still coming out all the time.
There's too many good games almost. I mean, that's part of the problem.
It wouldn't be a problem if these games weren't good.
They're all bad. I mean, there's a lot of bad to sift through, but
I mean, that's what, you know, struck me so much about Monster Hunter is like I want to somehow get a 30-hour day and use that extra 6 hours to play Monster Hunter every day, but I just can't.
Oh yeah, more hours in the day would be nice. Well, then there's, you know, I don't know. I think when you're young, you can devote a bunch of time to video games if you want to, but as you get a bit older, it's like you have to balance your whole life.
I wish I was in college again. I would love to have so much free time to play all these, but like I don't know. And people are like, "Oh, well, this is your job." It's like, yeah, but you still don't have like an extra 10 hours a day to play these, and sometimes you have to. Like Mass Effect Andromeda, I was playing 12-hour days of that to hit the review embargo, and it was just like a nightmare.
Yeah,
and that's the worst feeling is when you have to hit an embargo, and it's just like, do I hate this game or am I just playing this 11 hours a day?
You know, that is
my eyes are falling out.
No, that's a big problem. You always sort of have to check yourself when you're doing that.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad that we're not a big review site though at Forbes. You know, we're not relying on reviewing every game. Like we only come out with a couple of reviews a month probably. I mean, just depending, but you know, we're not trying so hard to get the embargo every time, to get all of the games. It's you know, I don't think that's where our strength lies necessarily. And I think it would be very difficult, like, to be in that.
Yeah, we need more people.
I mean, it's fine. It's just, it's not worth the investment, I'd say, for most games. Like, you're not really going to play like 30 hours of Into the Breach or whatever, like right before launched, and write a review that's going to get like 2,000 views or something, you know? That's why I think we do more kind of commentary about different issues of these games and writing, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 articles about different aspects of it, rather than putting so much weight on like, this is our official review, this is the score. Like, you know, it doesn't seem kind of as necessary as it used to, because these games are kind of ongoing experiences and there's all these different aspects to them. And
that's always one of the hardest, you know, when I was talking about Kingdom Come Deliverance, and I wrote this about Final Fantasy 15 the other day, is that it's the troubling thing with reviews and being a fan playing things at launch and doing all that is you're not necessarily playing the same game that people are going to play a long time later, and you're always inevitably playing the worst version of that game.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it becomes weird. So like Destiny 2, to go back to that, like I reviewed that and I think I gave it like a 9 out of 10 or something, but that was after I think like the first week.
Yeah, it was great that week.
Yeah, and like I felt at the time I really enjoyed the first playthrough. I thought it did way more stuff that was better than the original, but then the end game in the next 2 months that revealed itself was just terrible. But should I have delayed my review for 2 months? Like, do I have to keep updating the score and just constantly lowering it like some outlets do? Like,
but that actually raises an interesting question, and something that, you know, we have to consider going forward is, when do you review a game like Destiny 2? Because in all fairness, we probably shouldn't have a review of something like that out in the first month or even necessarily the first.
I think it's okay if you are clear about what aspects you're reviewing. Like, people know after the first week that you're not reviewing like kind of the grand scheme of this game that you're supposed to be playing for the next 2 years or something. So I guess you could argue whether it should be scored at that point, but I just care so little about scores. Like, at this point, I'm just okay slapping a 9 on something and, it changes Metacritic by 0.1. Like, I just don't care. So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't really mind the current system. And I still think even with all the drama around scores are still kind of settling in a way that does elevate the best games. Like, Mario and Zelda have the top scoring games of the year, which they obviously should be. And then truly garbage games are still getting pretty bad scores. I don't know. I don't think it's like this epidemic that's in some giant need of correction or anything.
I mean, it's a weird system in which you do your best. And I think that even, for a long-term game, maybe it is a little weird to give it a score even after a month. But at a certain point, you are providing a service. People, you got to be like, here's what I thought about this game. Well,
I think there are weird individual issues you can run into, like when IGN had like that glitch in Prey where it just like broke the game, and then so he gave it like a 4 out of 10. And then when the glitch was fixed, he's like, oh, now it's an 8.5. It's like I don't know, like that's a really specific issue, and like I can see that being problematic for one reason or another.
You're going at embargo. You got to score this game. The game doesn't work. What else do you do? Like, it's not.
Well, there are other options. I mean, you could say we're postponing our review because there's a game-breaking bug. Beware that this might happen if you buy this game. We're going to see if we can get it resolved, and we're going to see if it's widespread, and we're going to hold off giving a score or even putting out a review. I mean, you can do
I guess the counter to that is like, well, do they deserve to be punished for launching a game that has a game-breaking bug in it? Exactly. Should that cost them a few points?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess those are pretty rare issues. But
well, it's just hard to know, because 2 weeks in, that bug does not exist anymore. So is the score something that we're using to wag our fingers, or is it a measure of how good the game is?
Right. Yeah. And then you look at Destiny, the first one, how badly it reviewed it originally, and then how it became a very popular game that a lot of
it was the opposite problem. It got 6 out of 10s at launch, and everyone's like, I remember when everyone rated Destiny 6 out of 10, and like now it's everyone's favorite game. Like, and that was the opposite situation, but I don't know. It seems to kind of work itself out through the court of public opinion, regardless of what the Metacritic score might be.
It's even crazy. It is a very difficult thing to review a game and give it a score, because I'll think back to some games that I played and really liked, like Dark Souls 3. I really liked, and I think I gave it like maybe even a 10. I don't remember now. But then I go back to play it again a while later, and I'm like, I'm not liking this as much now. It's so hard to know after trying to get through a game, what you're going to feel about it later. Like, once you start to see where replay value is and support, how the game's supported, especially with games as a service. So there's no right answer here.
And replay value, there's replay value, but also, I think maybe my favorite game this generation is Bloodborne. I've only played it once. I might not ever play it again. And yet a little time just really wormed its way into my brain, even though I wasn't playing it anymore,
It's a wonderful game.
It really is. Everyone listening to this who has PSN Plus should be playing it right
Absolutely.
now.
Definitely. For free, you really
is that the free one this month? Yeah.
It's such a great game. It's, I definitely had problems with it compared to some of the stuff that you could get in Souls, like the lack of magic and whatnot. But overall, just in terms of just the entire design of that game, the world building, the combat, the lore, just the way it all weaves together, it's everything except for the stupid chalice dungeons is wonderful about that game.
For me, I actually thought the sort of winnowing down of the experience from sort of the Breath of Souls was a good thing. It made it much more targeted, much more direct, which I think fit with the sort of obsessive Lovecraftian madness thing where you're kind of burrowing into it. It's not a thing for exploration and sort of experimentation. It's a thing for obsessive drive.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I found it so difficult at first to adjust from Souls to Bloodborne. I remember just that very first boss, Father Gascon, just just destroyed me until I could figure out what I was doing. And then it wasn't so bad. I remember I posted like my first video of trying to fight him, and I still get comments on YouTube calling me various unkind things. But it's like, you do realize I was playing this game before it came out. Like, I'm not supposed to be good at it right away. Right. But it felt great to actually get good, as they say in the Souls community. And
I mean, that remains one of my proudest gaming accomplishments, because like I don't even play the Souls games, and I still ended up getting all the way through Bloodborne, which I was extremely proud of. So
yeah, me too.
Now, are you guys going to play Dark Souls Remastered?
Yeah, I mean, I did 3.
Probably.
I didn't finish 3. I got a little tired of it.
Yeah.
But I still appreciate sort of some of what's in it. I'm excited to go back and see what all the fuss was about with that big one.
It's a special game.
Play it on Switch.
Play it on Switch, so I can go to the bar. I can it's great.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that works on Switch. I'm definitely going to have to get it on PS4 also, though.
Yeah, that's
or maybe PC. I don't know.
Why not all 3?
Yeah, all of them.
Well, I mean, if you're doing it on console, Xbox One X.
Yeah, actually,
that might be the way to go.
Well, that's where I played Dark Souls for the first time, was Xbox 360.
So
you know what? I actually bought Dark Souls and I played it for the very first time. And the very first time I played it, I was like, "This game sucks. I do not like this game. It's slow. It's clunky. I don't understand it." And then like a week later, I put it back in and played. And well, maybe not a week. I don't know. But I got a vasectomy, so I had lots of time on my hands.
Free time.
And I put it back in, and I just played. Well, that's a 12 hours a day game for me when it first came out, when I first started playing it. And it remains one of my most treasured video game experiences.
That's how I felt about Demon Souls, where I hated it and then I put it down and then I never picked it up again. And that was my last
Demon Souls is a wonderful game.
That was a number of years ago.
They shut the servers down.
Yeah,
they did.
But you can still play the single player.
Yes.
You couldn't, even years ago, you couldn't really summon people very easily, and you very rarely got invaded. So
that was always my issue, Eric, with your argument that the easy mode was summoning people in any of these games, is that it was so often you just couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that got a lot better with Dark Souls 3, actually. But
yeah, I didn't have too much trouble with that. The worst was Neo. I could never get anyone in Neo.
Yeah. Neo is a cool game, but yeah, I don't think I ever even. No, I did summon one person one time, I think. But yeah, that was
one boss that really I found really annoying more than hard. Just really deeply spiritually annoying.
Which one?
The big blob.
The big blob.
It was like a big glob of water.
Oh yeah. Oh, I agree.
I hated that. And like the arena was full of these big holes. So you'd be strafing around, and then you just fall and die.
Yep, that's it.
And so I wanted to. I was like, I am not here for this. I want to summon someone to do it for me, and I just never could. And that was it for me and Neo.
Yeah, Neo. Boy, you should have played that when it was in alpha. When that came out in alpha, it was so much harder. I could not believe it was. You had to be so incredibly precise in every single way, and they really made it easier for release. So that says a lot about that game.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, for me, it was and the boss right before that had been that horrible, like poison worm thing.
Oh yeah, that was a pain in the ass too.
And that level was really annoying too. And if you hit me with 2 annoying levels in a row, you've pretty much lost me. That's what Dishonored 2 did.
Oh yeah, Dishonored 2. Talk about one of the most disappointing sequels ever.
Yeah, that was really too bad.
I hated how they changed it. They changed everything about it was worse, I think.
Yeah, I think sometimes you felt like it was a game. It was a game for the developer more than it was for the player, which was too bad, because Dishonored, the original, was such a sandbox for the player that I think they were a little too excited about showing off fun tricks.
Yeah, there's some videos out there of high level players of the original Dishonored that just do the most insane things. They're really fun to watch.
Oh yeah, I've seen those where it's the one guy who's like throwing stuff up in the air, and like 20 seconds later it comes and kills a guard he like lured there and all that stuff.
It's crazy.
That's good.
It just shows you I mean, Dishonored had problems. Like the story was kind of predictable, and I don't know. There were problems, but for the most part, it was a really wonderful game. I hope that when they make the third one, it's better. I didn't play that standalone.
Are they making a third one
heard
for
that was
sure?
good.
I wonder if they
think
will.
I don't think
I
we've
don't-
read the announcement. I wouldn't say it's a given.
I
Because-
remember that was kind of disappointing from a sales perspective. So
Yeah, well,
I'd be curious.
a lot of Bethesda stuff of that ilk was disappointing at the time. I think they're still committed to that kind of thing, but I think Prey shows that as far as first-person RPGs goes, Arcane is not married to Dishonored, so maybe they'll do something else.
Prey rocked. Prey was a great game.
Yeah, that was a cool.
Prey was real cool.
That makes me think of the whole time when Doom and Prey were coming out and Dishonored 2. It was during the Bethesda's like anti-game journalist midlife crisis, basically.
Did that ever end? I don't even.
Oh well, I remember I wrote something about it, and like the PR guy from Bethesda started screaming at me on Twitter.
Oh right, I remember that.
Yeah, it was like so getting mad at me for like how it's not true and how they were giving out copies of like Evil Within 2 or something. I don't know. And I'm like, well, where's the, if you want to actually put out a public statement saying this has changed, like feel free. But until you do that, like,
yeah, they had a public statement when they changed it in the first place.
Yeah. I couldn't believe that. I was thinking about blocking Bethesda PR on Twitter.
Yeah, that was a really odd moment. It just, you're like, okay, you can have your policy, but why are we making such a big deal about it? That's not going to end well.
Yeah, well, it's such a stupid policy to just give review copies out to like YouTubers you're paying and what they forgot that there's a benefit to the publisher to have the reviews coming out also.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think Prey was a great example of that. Like we want to work for Prey. Like I think the video game journalism community in general would have loved to have been there to support Prey because everyone really liked it. But they couldn't because they didn't have the game.
Yeah, and that's for a game like Prey especially. That is a new IP. That's kind of but I mean it is new, really. I mean it's not anything like the old Prey.
Yeah.
So it's like a brand new series basically, and not a huge. It was never like Doom or something big like that in the first place. So it's a totally new game, a new concept. It adds some sort of old school feel to it, but I just think it would have, it could have benefited from all that hype that people like us would have provided it. But
which I think is why blanket policies with that are just often a tricky thing. Like, it totally makes sense why you might want to restrict access for some games, but you don't want to slam the door on not doing it with other games.
Yeah. Stop sucking, Bethesda. Jeez.
And on that note,
I mean, you're not as bad as Konami or anything, or like Koei Tecmo.
Konami's in like their own category. They don't even.
Yeah.
Koei Tecmo gave me plenty of time with Dynasty Warriors 9, which might not have been a great idea.
No, probably not. That game was.
Oh yeah, that was a disappointment.
I didn't have to play much with it before I knew I wasn't going to play anymore.
Yeah, it did get me going back to playing Dynasty Warriors 8 Extreme Legends Complete Edition, however, which I've been having a great time with.
Well, that's good. See, silver lining.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think wrapping up on Bethesda being just full of it is a good place to kind of draw to a close today. But this was fun.
Yeah, definitely.
We need to do this more often. I think it's good to kind of there is so much.
There wasn't any gaming news like forever, so then there's an avalanche.
Let's do it. Let's do it next Thursday, 3 Eastern. We could just say that.
I can do that. I think let me just meditate here on my Thursday is good for me.
All right, cool. Yeah, I think it's just nice to check in.
It is. I agree, and cool. All right. Well, for everyone listening, thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Peace.